Good evening. Welcome to the Southbridge School Committee meeting. Tonight is Tuesday, December 9th, 2014. Please join the school committee in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. This evening we're pleased to continue kind of part two of a student award ceremony that we had at the last school committee meeting. At that meeting you may recall that there was a conflict unintended with the Lions Club event, and so some students who were to receive recognition that night were not present to receive their certificates, so we'd like to ask that we'd like to recognize them tonight, I'm sorry. I'm going to ask that Mrs. Donovan go to the podium and read the names, and if the superintendent and Mrs. Earls would like to present the certificates, that would be great. I just want to say, I'm not trying to be rude, I actually slipped and fell on the ice today, and I'm in a little bit of pain, so Mrs. Donovan generously offered to do this portion for me. Thank you.
Okay, so we first would like to recognize our MCAS award recipients. Both of these boys are grade 11. They're smart cousins, and they both scored advanced in their math and ELA at last year's MCAS. So we'd like at this time to first recognize Cameron Boisvert. And second, we would like to recognize Jake Boisvert. Mike. All set? Did you want to say something about scholarships before we start doing the meetings?
Good evening. I'm Pat Gardner. I'm the superintendent. I'm very excited to be here every time that we recognize scholarship. It's always exciting. The John and Abigail Adams Scholarship was actually one of the good things that Romney did, I believe, for Massachusetts, was that students who score well on MCAS, have exceptional attendance, receive a scholarship that they can attend any state-funded school in the state of Massachusetts. And I know just from many years in Massachusetts, it's helped a number of students attend college, and it's a bit of a relief on parents. We wish it was more than it is, but it really does showcase those students that do well in school, and it's not just the valedictorian or the salutatorian who often get a lot of the scholarship money and a lot more of the attention, but it really focuses on students who are scholars who may not necessarily be the top. Some of them will be. You don't get to be the first in your class without being a John and Abigail Adams Scholar, so we're excited tonight to present these. Thank you.
Okay, so our first recipient is Robert Botch. Next we have Ashley Cahill. Clarissa Camacho.
You want to turn around for a photo?
Next we have Moses Cardona. Ismaili De Leon. Hanukkah Ellis. Courtney Gallipo. Ariana Gonzalez. Brett Hoare. Terry Lackings. Mariah Marrero. Sari McNeil. David Madero. Gabriela Oliveras. Congratulations. Devin Olivo. Congratulations, Devin. Alexander Osorio. Nady Ramirez. Crystal Ramos. Kelsey Santa. Benjamin Snow. Heriberto Torres. Nilsalise Torres. Desham Vasquez. Congratulations. You're welcome. And Timothy Yady. Yeah, I'll put them in the folder. And that concludes our presentation of recipients of the John and Abigail Adams Scholarships.
Do you want to do a group photo? Should we do a group photo? What? What? You want to do a group photo? If you'd like to come up and we'll have a group photo. I know some people weren't able to attend tonight. I think maybe the weather had something to do with it, but if you'd like to gather up front for a group photo, we did that with the elementary school kids. It was really nice. And the parents, too, because the parents play a big part. Sure. Yeah. Yeah. I'll skedaddle out of your picture.
Parents want to come up and take a picture with your kids? Kids stay there. They're putting a lot of hard work, right, as well.
Hi, come on. Hi. Nice try, Craig. Thank you again, everybody. Please, you're welcome to take some cookies and juice if you'd like to. You can certainly stay for the meeting, but for those of you who'd like to exit, we're going to give just a quick 5-minute recess for that purpose, so you can visit with your friends, get some refreshments, and then we'll resume the meeting in 5 minutes' time. We're going to go ahead and get started in a second.
Bang your.
That's what Pat said.
You want me to do it? I can do it.
I'm sure you can.
Hey, bang that gavel.
School committee members, please report to the dais. Thank you.
Just keep talking.
How's that? Rock your
That's funny.
Where's Erin? Quinny.
Oh, she's talking to the lady in the back row.
Okay, thank you very much. We're going to resume the meeting. The time is 7:19 p.m. Please note for the record that all school committee members are on the dais. I would ask for quiet in the audience, please. We're going to resume our meeting. Thank you. Now is agenda item number 3. This is public input. Is there anybody from the public who would like to address the school committee this evening? Good evening.
Good evening, members of the school committee, Mrs. Superintendent. My name is Esteban Carrasco, citizens of this
Madam Chair,
Yes.
can we
committee.
ask for quiet?
Yes. Can I have quiet in the council chambers, please? So we can hear the speaker. Thank you. Thank you.
All set?
Yes, go ahead. I'm
Okay,
sorry.
great. First of all, I am honored to be here tonight to witness these students receive such an achievement. To me, it's a privilege, it's an honor to see it. This is something that I've always said that happens in Southbridge. We do have positive things that are happening in our school district with our students. The second thing that I want to personally mention is I want to thank the members of the school committee that participated in the big old turkey bowl. Thank you to Erin Quinney. In my eyes, she's the MVP. She caught the 30-yard pass. So I want to thank you guys for participating. That was an awesome time. Last night during Councilors Forum, it was presented to me that our superintendent had decided to close the building of administration, central offices, from December 24th through January 5th, and give all those employees that time off with pay. Since I've stated that comment last night at roughly 10 p.m., I have received several conflicting reports in regards to what's going on and how it's being handled. I just would like some clarification because it's created some conflict on our town side, and if it's true, okay, and how is it being justified? And if it's not true, when was it taken care of, and can we move forward? Because I'm troubled, because if it's true and it's being justified, how can we use our citizens' tax dollars to give people an extra 5.5 days vacation when it's not the right thing to do? So I don't know if this is through to the chair or to the superintendent. I'm not sure, because I've received several phone calls, emails, texts since 10 p.m. last night, so I just want to see where we're at with that.
Councilor Carrasco, the superintendent can address that during her report.
Okay.
We'll address that during her report
Okay.
and provide you that information.
All right, great. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Is there anybody else from the public who would like to address the school committee this evening? Seeing none, we'll officially call the meeting to order at 7:22 p.m., please. Next item on the agenda is approval of a consent agenda, of our consent agenda. Again, this is a relatively new agenda item. The agenda last week was prepared with 4 consent agenda items to include, I'm sorry, I neglected to request a roll call. Julianne?
Mrs. Congdon?
Present?
Mr. Levo?
Present.
Dr. Page?
Present.
Mrs. Donovan?
Present.
Mrs. Quinney?
She's here.
Oh, okay. Mr. Abrahamson?
Present.
Mrs. McLaughlin?
Present.
All present?
Thank you, sorry about that. So the consent agenda was prepared with 4 consent items, one of those being approval of the minutes of the last meeting. However, it's necessary to remove approval of those minutes. School committee members have not had ample time to review them, so that will be on a future agenda. There remain on the agenda 3 other consent items. They are all policy readings, second readings of policies BG, policy ADDA, and DJE. Does any member wish to have any items removed from the consent agenda? Mrs. Quinney.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I request this be removed. BG.
Mrs. Quinney is requesting that policy BG, policy development, adoption, implementation, and review, be removed from the agenda. It's not a debatable item, so we'll remove that from the agenda, and we'll put that under old business, unfinished business, in the agenda. Thank you. So there remain 2 items on the consent agenda, items B2, policy ADDA, and B3, policy DJE. Does anybody wish to have either of these items removed from the agenda? If none, these items are before you. If there's no objection, these items will be adopted. Seeing no objection, these items are adopted, and the second readings of those policies are waived. Next, chairperson's announcements. I don't have any announcements this evening. I will have some comments under member forum. So we'll move to reports. First, we have representative of the Student Advisory Committee, Cameron Boisvert. Welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mass EDCO will be hosting the first annual MA College Application Celebration at Southbridge Middle High School tomorrow from 8:30 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. 25 seniors will be applying to college and will be cheered on by the Southbridge Middle High School administration and guidance staff. The National Honor Society will be holding its second annual Adopt a Senior fundraiser this month. Last year, NHS raised over $650, its most successful fundraiser of the school year. We're hoping to do better this year. The National Honor Society will be holding a toy drive at the middle high school and perhaps at home athletic events. Students, staff, and members of the community are invited to drop off one new or slightly used unwrapped toy. These toys will be donated to needy families in the district. Tomorrow, the sheriff will be coming to have breakfast with students who donated coats for the Coats and Kids fundraiser. More coats were donated this year than last year. Both Southbridge and Webster were very impressed with the bonfire and alumni game. Mr. Carrero has been receiving phone calls from Webster citizens who attended saying that they were very thankful for the game. 3 weeks ago, Mr. Carrero submitted papers for the student council to go to a conference at the Cape. We're still waiting to hear back from them. The conference is something we always have attended, but for the last couple of years, we have been unable to go. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Next, we have some school committee reports, a curriculum subcommittee report. Is there anything, Mrs. Donovan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. The only thing to report is the meeting of our next upcoming subcommittee meeting, and that'll be held Wednesday, December 17th at 6:30 p.m. And the agenda will be forthcoming in the near future. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Quinney, I'm reluctantly going to ask you about negotiations.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The negotiation subcommittee will have their next meeting with the SEI Local 888
You want to read or
at
translate?
the next meeting, December 11th at M100. Thank you.
I think you need to conserve your voice. We have the report of the Sped PAC Liason. Would you like somebody to do that for you?
Sure.
Great.
At the next meeting.
What time?
It's at 6 o'clock at 100.
Is it the 11th?
The 18th.
The next meeting for the Sped PAC Liaison Committee will be on December 18th at 6 p.m. in room M100 at 25 Cole Avenue.
Thank you. And for Policy Subcommittee, I'll just report that tomorrow night we have a meeting scheduled 6:30 p.m. Cole Ave. I believe it's in room M115, could be room M100. That meeting will take place at 6:30 tomorrow night. And next, we have the Superintendent Evaluation Ad Hoc Committee. Mrs. Donovan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. At this point in time, I do not have a report and no meeting scheduled. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else? We're good? Okay. Report of the Finance Director, Mr. Osborne.
Sure. At present, the Finance Department is working on preparing information for negotiations, as well as setting up documents for next year's budget, preparing documents for principals to take a look at where they are currently, look at, what they want to spend money on the next year and where they'd like to invest some things. The next, the next phase, I mentioned it previously, but we'd like to start looking at setting up positional controls in our payroll system. Currently, I think I mentioned that we account for new hires and things like that, mostly in an Excel spreadsheet. There's no real specific positional control within our payroll system. So there are a lot of opportunities for handoffs and delays, and maybe not as much information as we'd be able to pull as quickly as we'd like. By setting up some positional controls within the system, we'll have that a little bit more available. I also want to look at some of our line item descriptions in the budget. Some of them are confusing. They're older line item descriptions that some items have been placed in along the way. Job descriptions have changed, line items have changed, and I think it's just time to clean that up in the system.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And next to the Superintendent, Ms. Gardner.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll start by talking about the vacation days. Last year, there was, having been new last year as the Director of Teaching and Learning, there was a past precedent set that during Christmas vacation, administrators were given a few days off during the holidays. We considered going with that past practice. We have rescinded that, and administrators and administrative assistants will be taking either their personal days or their holidays. I believe the thought when it was done last year, I don't know if it was done before that, I wasn't in the district, then Superintendent Nimbercall hoped that by closing some of the buildings and being able to turn the heat back, that it would be an additional savings. The other thing that I would like to say this year about having considered giving administrators some additional time off is the administrators this year have really stepped up and answered the call of working even longer hours. I mean, their regular day is a 9-hour day, and they've all been very committed to coming to school committee meetings every 2 weeks. And on those days, it's a 15, 16, 17-hour day. And having been a high school principal myself, high school principals have activities every day, every night of the year. So this wasn't a situation where, neither myself nor my staff or, I talked to Madam Chair about it a few weeks ago. It was not an attempt to dupe anybody or take extra time. In fact, many of us rolled over extra days last year. I know I rolled over 17 myself, so it's not an issue of days. It was more an issue of people who work incredibly hard. I understand that we are on salary, and I understand that we're not paid by the hour, but we will be putting in our vacation days, and we will be taking personal days or the different types of vacation or days off that people have. The other piece with that is that all of our assistant principals have a contract that gives them the month of July off, and it gives them 8 vacation days during the year. They start around August 1st and they go until June, so that was a little bit for them as well, because 8 days during the year with a high-pressure job is not a lot of vacation days. But today, everyone was made aware that they will have to use their vacation days or personal days. So I hope that answers your questions. Another couple of things that I want to mention: we had our first delay today. We had a 2-hour delay, and knock on wood, I guess I'm a little superstitious. It was a really good start to the morning. From what I understand, there were no issues this morning. I'm sure we had one or two. Somebody will tell me later. But overall, we had a great start. I'd like to thank all of the administrators in the schools for being out, for getting students in. I think our bus drivers did a really good job this morning, and it was a good, safe day. It is December, and it is New England, so we can look for those. I think my final thing that I'm going to mention tonight, tomorrow we have an AIP meeting with Sally Dias and Patricia Williams, our plan monitor. It's our second quarterly report, and it looks again as though we're going to have good news. Today, Patricia Williams, our plan monitor, was in the district. She and Cheryl Stanton visited all the schools, did learning walks, took a look at what was going on, and she was very, very pleased. So we're excited about the academic progress that we're making. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, Mr. Abrams.
Our counselor, our friend, Mr. Carrasco, mentioned confusion. Seeds of confusion are sown when things are aired on public television without corroboration. I might say that his colleague, Councilor Manna, last night broke her, what I guess was a truce. They called it an olive branch, but I guess that's gone. But at the November 25th meeting, she stated for the public that the Southbridge Public Schools have been at level 4 since 1998. And Madam Chair, the term level 4 wasn't even added to any school district until 2010. The fact is, the school district was declared an underperforming district by the Board of Elementary and Secondary Education in 2004. Some people out there, I know it's new math, some people out there call that 2 decades. That seems like 10 years to me. So, Madam Chair, I would urge our friends on the town council side, if they have any questions, why not come to the chair first here, instead of asking them and speculating on them in an open town meeting. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Abrahamson? No. Not our meeting.
Madam Chair, I'd ask to let him respond.
If the school committee, that's not our policy, Mr. Carrasco, if the school committee would like to give you the opportunity to respond, that's a decision I'll leave up to this board.
I say, Madam Chair,
Yeah.
I move that the councilor be allowed to respond.
Thank you. Is there a second to that?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Olivo. All in favor? Show of hands. Thank you. The motion carries. Councilor Carrasco?
Just to quickly respond in regards to why it was brought public, I approached members of the school committee prior to getting on the platform or whatever it might be called to bring this issue up. Furthermore, our town manager reached out to our superintendent to clarify the confusion because it was brought up to us about 2.5 weeks ago. So we did do our due diligence in trying to bridge the gap. But again, there was some major confusion in regards to how it was presented. When it was presented to me and also the chairman who was here, it was never presented as the administrators. Absolutely, they work hard. Truthfully, the 4 principals we have now in each of the schools, I truly believe are part of the success that's happening right now in our district because they're working extremely hard. So I kudos to all 4 of them. I've been to many events in all the schools, and they are working really hard. Now, in regards to the way it was presented, Mr. Abrahamson, it was presented that the central office staff was going to be closed. Central office, which to me is clerks, secretaries, assistants. If you're going to give those people days off, 5.5 days, and you're going to close central office, that is where the confusion lies, and that's how it was presented to us. It was at no point in time meant to bring more negative, because I am a firm believer that we need to turn this train around and ship it in the right direction because we're off track on both sides. We have some major issues.
If I may, Counselor, who presented you with that?
Our town manager, after he had the conversation with the superintendent.
So the town manager said that the superintendent was just going to close and give people 5 days vacation.
According to the conversation he had,
Yeah,
and what
okay.
was presented to us,
Now, Counselor, I don't disagree with you. I think politically, it's a ridiculous notion to say close this, we are a school district that is in trouble. And it doesn't show, I don't think it shows good judgment to do that. I agree with you. Now, how do we prevent these other conversations going on in town council that have no corroboration and aren't true?
Madam Chair, I'd like to call a point of order. That has nothing to do with what conversation that was going on.
Thank you. But in actuality, it does. If I may, I did not see the meeting last night, so it's not fair for me necessarily to comment on the meeting, but I was advised of some of the comments that were made and of previous meetings that have been held, and it's very concerning to me, and this is not personally directed toward you or to anybody in particular, but the politics of shock and awe in this community are outrageous. Everybody drops bombs, and then it lets them explode and see what happens. I think, to your point, you just clarified how information got to you, and that makes some sense to me. But it would be greatly appreciated if you could relay to the town council that if there are specific concerns, they certainly can bring them to any school committee member. But I, as the chair, can coordinate and get those answers, because what school committee members tend to do is bring those concerns to me. And I did have a concern from a school committee member, and I was in the process of researching that, and was planning to answer that today, and then I heard last night that this had transpired. So I think just in the future, we are all on the same team here, and we need to act that way and behave that way. I think it's unprofessional at times to call people out publicly, because what it appears to me, and this may not be the actual case or intent, but it appears to me people want a reaction rather than the answers they're seeking. And the information is here. It's not always scary. Like I said, the school department does not get the benefit of the doubt in just about any instance I can think of. People's minds always go to the worst place. And it really was a discussion that occurred centering on holidays occurring kind of midweek. For the school district, the day before Christmas is also a holiday. And rather than heat the schools and break up, starting the boilers over and doing that, it was discussed as a potential cost-saving measure. Once questions started to be asked, things were rethought. And that's what we should be able to do. There should be a little bit of political cover where people can feel free to ask those questions. They're valid questions, and get answers, but not in a context that is so confrontational or so combative that it just creates ill will on both sides. And that's what I hope to avoid. So I thank you for bringing your concerns forward. I appreciate that, and if you'd bring that message back to the town council, I'd appreciate that as well.
if I may, Madam Chair, number one, I am one of 9, and that's why I'm here tonight. I said it publicly, and I showed face. I don't need to say something and run. I say I'm running, and the 3 things I promised the people of Southbridge that elected me was to hold people accountable, bring the town closer together in unity, and bring a level of respect. We can disagree and agree, but we still got to respect each other. I totally agree with you. In regards to how some members of our council behave and react, I'm sorry for their actions. There's really not much that I can control. In regards to trying to get the information prior to me making it public, I did do that. I reached out to school committee members, and also our town manager reached out personally to the superintendent. And at that point in time, there was no bend. Had a conversation. He brought the concern to myself as a vice chairman and to the chairman, and to see what can be done, because there was no turning of the arm. This is what we're doing. Therefore, I felt it was necessary to bring it to the public forum, because again, we're talking big money. We're talking days that don't belong as days off, and people in this building wanted the same kind of treatment. And unfortunately, we can't shut this building down for 5.5 days. So that's how it was presented to me. At no point in time was it presented, again, with administrators. It was presented central office. So again, my intentions were not to bring negative feelings to this school committee or to the public. But again, we did our due diligence trying to reach out. If it wasn't resolved and there was a strong arm, then I had no choice, because that's what I believe in. That's who I am. I will not change who I am for politics. Because tell you the truth, I hate politics. I'm here for the kids and I'm here for the community. I want the best for Southbridge. So that's why I show face. I'm not going to go on public and use the TV or whatever it's called to send a message. No, I'm going to say it and I'm going to show face. I don't have to hide behind somebody else saying something. No, that's why I'm here tonight, because I needed an answer. And I thank you that you guys responded today and made a wise decision, because it was a bomb. Unfortunately, again, Mr. Abrahamson, yes, it should have been handled in closed doors. It should have never been brought out to the public. But at the same time, if it wasn't handled correctly, what you do in darkness will see you out in light. So that's all I got to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
One more thing, just to through you to the counselor. We do want openness and we do want communication. And I don't think it's been there to the extent that it should be. And I'm hoping that some of the things that we're going to talk about tonight will do that. We're a peace-loving group. And all we want is another peace-loving group on your side.
And again, I can only speak for myself. I know what I bring to the table and what I have to offer. And again, I can't speak for the 9. I only can speak for 1. But I do, as long as I'm an elected official, whether it's today, tomorrow, or the remaining of my term, I will continue to be who I am and build the level of respect. I'm not here to bash you guys or anything like that. I just want answers. Because again, we just got to do things smooth and done it right. So at that point, you will always get a level of respect from me, even if we disagree. I will look at you in the face and say, not the wisest decision in my opinion, but we'll be able to still have a cup of coffee, because that's who I am. So again, I apologize if it brought some animosity, but that's not who I am. I just wanted an answer. And again, I can't speak for the council. I will relay the message. Mr. Chairman is here, so he will also relay the message. But again, we're only 2 out of 9, and it's definitely an interesting bunch, for lack of better words.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Did you have anything further, Pat? I think we were still on.
I would just like to say that perhaps when I spoke with the town manager, there was a misunderstanding. As I said, it was a past practice last year that administrators had additional days off, and the administrators knew for, I would guess, a month that this was going to be something that we were going to do. So, I apologize for, an error in judgment, I guess. I was going on past practice, and we're trying to change things here, and I will note that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We're moving on to agenda item number 8, school committee actions. Declaration of obsolete desktop computers as salvage for purpose of disposal through recycling at a later date. Does anybody have a motion? We can begin discussion.
So moved. Second.
Motion by Mr. Abrahamson, seconded by Dr. Page. Now discussion. This agenda item is something that we've discussed a few different times in a few different ways, and at the last meeting, I believe Mrs. Congdon requested some clarification. Did you receive what you needed in the packet, or do you want to start discussion?
Sure, I will. Thank you. Through you to Mr. Osborne. During discussion, I thought that the hard drives were already wiped, but according to this, they said that they would be wiping the hard drives.
This company will, that's a marketing email from the company. It's a blanket email to a number of people. This is an example of one company we use. We have wiped the hard drives ourselves. However, this company also provides that as part of what they do.
Great, thank you. And would this be the company that you would recommend using?
This is a company that's extended themselves to us numerous times. I'd be delighted to use them. They come to our site, they pick them up, they have their own staff that transport them. Again, they wipe the hard drives, it doubles our protection. So not only we have wiped them, but a third party will have wiped them.
Great, and then we'll get that certificate of destruction?
Yeah, they'll give us a receipt of some sort.
My other question was, according to this email, I know you said it's a blanket email, but it says pencil you in for another pickup. Did we already have a pickup?
No. That is, they schedule pickups throughout the community. They're sending this to many different people within the community. They send a large truck out, and they visit multiple locations on those days. So they're not just coming to this area, this school district. They're coming to the entire area. They have been to this area 4 or 5 times in the past, quarter.
But not here this year?
Not here, obviously, yes.
Thank you for that clarification.
Yep.
Is there any other discussion?
So, Madam Chair, will this then, with this vote, this is to authorize the Finance Director to pursue this and get this done to completion, correct?
Correct. Our job is to declare them obsolete for the purpose as salvage, and then the administrative way that that's done is organized administratively.
It's through the town. We then go through the town, I believe.
Yep. Coordinates that. Yep. This would do it. Is there any other discussion? Okay, seeing none, we have a motion on the floor to declare, regarding the declaration of obsolete desktop computers as salvage for purpose of disposal for the recycling at a later date. May I have a roll call, please?
Mr. Olivo?
Yes.
Dr. Page?
Yes.
Mrs. Donovan?
Yes?
Mrs. Quinney?
Yes.
Mr. Abrahamson?
Yes.
Mrs. Congdon?
Yes.
Mrs. McLaughlin?
Yes.
All yes?
Thank you. The motion carries. The next is, there was discussion or a suggestion regarding the establishment of a finance subcommittee for the 2014-2015 school year. Is there a motion to begin discussion?
So moved.
Mrs. Congdon makes the motion. Is there a second?
Second?
Seconded by Mrs. Donovan. And is there any discussion on this agenda?
Madam Chair.
Yes.
We have words like restore the Finance Subcommittee, and that assumes that there was one. I don't believe there was a Finance Subcommittee on this. It's what I see here, and it's okay, I want to pursue this, is the Finance Subcommittee basically becoming the Budget Subcommittee. All of the duties here seem to be appropriate for a Budget Subcommittee. So I guess I'm asking why we need a second. Why don't we reinstitute the Budget Subcommittee and have a Finance Liaison Committee? If I may I explain? We have two sides. We have the town side and the school side. So if we consider the town council on the left and the school committee on the right, although I think the town council is way over on the right, but we'll do it this way. For the town council, they then go to the Education and Human Services Committee, okay? For the school committee, we would formally go to the Budget Subcommittee. And those things that, a lot of the things that are being required or suggested for the finance director really should be handled in the budget subcommittee. Those are, they are to bring stuff to the full committees, whether it's the town council side or the school side. I propose that we reinstitute the budget subcommittee with 3 members and 2 alternates. From that group, they elect a finance liaison committee, which meets with, I assume, and I assume the town would like to have this, their finance liaison committee, so that the information that they keep seeking, and rightfully so, it is money being spent, each finance liaison committee can take the concerns, they could bring, here's what we're talking about on the town side, here's what we're talking about on the school side, here's our concerns. They bring that back to their Education and Human Services Committee, and ours go back to the Budget Subcommittee, and then that's discussed at that level. The only thing that should be coming up to the full committee are recommendations from our Budget Subcommittee as informed by discussions with these other people. I don't need to hear all of this. I want to see it. I mean, I want to see the minutes of meetings and things like that. But we don't have to have all that reported here. And all those meetings would be public meetings that anyone could attend. The only thing is that the liaison committees would not be a voting committee. They could have 2 co-chaired, one by the town, one by the school, and have a recording secretary. We do need that communication. It's clear. We see that tonight. We need that communication. They're asking for it. And I believe we should have it. But I believe that's the way it needs to be done. A lot of the stuff, again, that's being asked for under this proposed finance committee really belongs in our budget finance subcommittee. It belongs there. Okay? And a lot of this should be worked out at that level. Thank you.
Is there any other discussion? Dr. Page?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to follow up on my colleague's comments, I believe, I was researching this a little bit recently, and I believe at one point in time, I think not so much longer than 2 or 3 years ago, there was a standing subcommittee on the school committee. I believe it was called Finance, Buildings, and Maintenance, was the title of that subcommittee. And, so to follow up there, to me, that kind of makes sense to wrap those things into one subcommittee, because it does, as my colleague stated, have a lot to do with working with the town, representatives of the town, in terms of what do we need for capital improvements, what do we need for maintenance, and all these kinds of things, because they are town buildings and so forth. So my recommendation would be to possibly look into that previous structure and whatever research we can do to see if that made sense, and work with folks on the town to establish this in a meaningful way moving forward. And in terms of what you titled the meeting, I think it's a little bit more than, or titled the subcommittee, it's a little bit more than just budget preparation. It's also sort of routine monitoring and maintenance of the finances of the district as we move through a year, which will impact budget development.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there further discussion?
I just believe that we need I'm sorry.
Okay.
Well, no, I just remember, because I was on the committee at that time 2 years ago, and I believe it was budget, facilities, and transportation, if that rings a bell with people. So therefore, I was not a part of that. I don't recall. I might have been for a tiny bit, but I don't recall, because I think shortly after that is when we got rid of that altogether under a different chair, and we just made it like a committee of the whole budget meeting moving forward, and that's been the practice. I think it is a good idea. I think the budget in itself is one of the most important things that both the town side and the school side do, and it's very, very important that most of our focus be on that. I like the idea of having it be an ongoing subcommittee because I feel that in many ways the facilities and the transportation aspect of it, although not exclusive, together, they are part of the whole budget process. And I would prefer that a subcommittee like this be ongoing throughout the year, not just during budget season. I think it's important for both the committee as a whole and for that subcommittee in conjunction with the finance director and superintendent to always be looking at that and always keeping track of things. I like the idea of Mr. Abrahamson's suggestion of a finance liaison committee. I understand I've just heard it now, but I understand where he's coming from with it. I just don't want to get too discombobulated with all these different subcommittees. That would be my only fear. I think it is important for town side and school side to work together, and probably a smaller group to do that would be more beneficial to both sides. But I don't want to get too technical with all these subcommittees and not know who's referring to who and who's referring to what type of thing. So I'm not against it, but I think just a little bit further clarification of what the role of that second finance liaison committee you're referring to. If I understood you correctly, if we were to create our subcommittee, whatever we call it, then we would ask that the town council also create a similar one, and then those two groups, or that liaison group, would work separately and then report back to the level of our two subcommittees, and then those two subcommittees would go up to full. Is that what you're...
Right.
That's what you're doing. I think I'm okay with that as long as we're clear on who does what, and that that chain of command is brought up. I just don't want it to get too miscombobulated with all these different subcommittees, because that can happen. It's important work, and I don't want it to get, the process to be not as effective as it could be, because we're dealing with all these, a school committee or a town council, then a subcommittee, and then a subcommittee of the subcommittee. I don't want it to get too frazzled. So that's all I have to say. Thank
Madam
you.
Chair, I do understand that. Pardon me. But I just want to make sure that the flow of information is such that the spending of this school side is not being debated from a lack of knowledge on the town side, publicly. I think we need to make sure that they know exactly what we're doing, and we know exactly what they're doing, and we need to work together.
Is there further discussion? Mrs. Quinney?
I'll try my best. Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to, I don't know. My concern with having a committee called the Budget, Facilities, and Transportation, where facilities is overseeing maintenance, and then transportation. Maintenance and transportation are line items within the budget. So if budget is separate from those things, I don't know how we move forward with that. What does that look like? We can't oversee. It's not our role as a school committee to oversee maintenance and facilities and transportation. It's our role to oversee the budget, and those things are part of the budget.
So if I just may, Mrs. Donovan referred to the fact that we had the Budget, Facilities, and Transportation Subcommittee a couple of years ago. And the decision or the discussion on that was that at the time, a lot of, or not a lot of, school committee members expressed concern that they were kind of out of the loop. And so the discussion was, well, should we meet as a committee of the whole so that everybody's kind of on the same page when it comes to the budget, which we argue is a big responsibility that we have, our main responsibility. And so that did appear to work for a time. However, I think, we have different members on the school committee now, certainly, and I think as we've had some of those committee of the whole meetings, budget meetings, they have not been as productive maybe as they could be, just because there's so many voices at the same time, to your point, about making recommendations. So I guess my question to you would be, if we established, just called it, instead of finance, a budget subcommittee for the 2014-2015 school year, and that budget subcommittee acted as the liaisons with EHS themselves. So there's not a subcommittee to subcommittee, but just have asked that subcommittee to be the main liaison with EHS for the purposes of this. Whether all of them showed up or at least one representative to represent the intra-school side, would that be an acceptable alternative?
I believe so, Madam Chair.
So,
Madam
yes.
Chair, just one comment. Maybe I'm just getting hung up over vernacular here, but the idea, I think of different words mean different things. So if you say budget, that means you're basically involved, you're restricting yourself in terms of what that subcommittee's responsibility is, in terms of being involved in preparing the next year's budget. I would prefer that it be sort of titled something, either it could be, if you want to include budget, it could be budget management or fiscal management or whatever it is. But really, I think that subcommittee should encompass more than just preparing the budget for next year. It should involve monitoring and basically monitoring and reporting to the school committee where appropriate and to the town the current management of the current financial year as well. And I would defer to the finance director through the superintendent, through the chair, to comment whether they think that's appropriate or not as well. But that's my feeling on that issue. I think the job of that committee is more than just budget preparation.
Madam Chair, would it be called Budget and Finance Subcommittee?
Budget and Finance Subcommittee. What a nice compromise. Mrs. Quinn.
Madam Chair, I would say that our role as a school committee is not only to prepare the budget, but it's oversight of the budget. That's our role. So by calling it the Budget Subcommittee, one could infer that we would be overseeing the current budget as well as starting preparation on the next year's budget.
Point taken.
Again, I don't want to get hung up on semantics. I mean, as long as we define the function of what the committee's going to do, and we all agree that that's what the committee's going to do, I just don't want to get into a weird situation with words and say, you guys are doing things you shouldn't be doing because you're only supposed to be preparing the budget. You're not supposed to be managing the budget. So as long as we're in agreement with what we mean, I think it's fine. It doesn't matter what we call it.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Mrs. Quinn.
Semantics or not, it's not our role to manage the budget. That's the role of the finance director. Our job is to oversee the budget. So we can't manage the budget, so to speak. I forgot what I thought. Excuse me. I also think something we need to be careful of is that the budget subcommittee reports to the committee of the whole, so they can't make a decision in the budget subcommittee. That is then a standing decision, that any of those decisions need to be brought to the committee as a whole, so they can't oversee and say that can't be, or this is what we need to do. They would prepare something, oversee something, and then report to the whole committee. So it's not relinquishing the whole committee's responsibility and budget oversight and preparedness. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right. So at present, there is a motion on the floor to establish a finance subcommittee for the 2014-2015 school year. That's the current motion on the floor. We can either vote on that motion can be amended. What I would recommend, if we go this route to establish whatever committee we call it, is that one of the first meetings of that committee, it's discussed what the role is, and then that's brought back to the committee to, again, discuss and agree to. But I think we are going to hit budget season pretty quickly, and we need to kind of get a move on it. So currently, the motion on the floor is the establishment of a finance subcommittee. Mrs. Donovan?
I just have one more question. Our current subcommittees have there's 4 people altogether. There's 3 members and an alternate. Mr. Abrahamson had mentioned perhaps 3 members and 2 alternates. I don't know, do we want to change the makeup of this particular subcommittee to reflect Mr. Abrahamson's composition, or do we want it to look like all our other subcommittees and have 3 school committee members on that subcommittee with 1 alternate? I think we need to decide that, and then once that's decided, then we can see who actually those 3 people or 4 or 5 people will be.
Fair enough. Mr. Abrahamson, is there a reason for the 2 alternates?
It was when I thought that we could elect from that group.
Oh, the liaison.
5
Yeah.
that could be part of the finance liaison.
But then that comes into quorum issues, maybe.
No, it would,
Still have 3 people.
right. But, Madam Chair, it would appear that more discussion is needed. So and yet you are quite right that we're getting close, and
Yeah.
so.
Well, look, our next meeting is December 23rd. I'm sorry, Jill.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to say that I would like to see this committee get together and meet sooner rather than later. I think throughout this year, we've had many budget questions. We still can't decide on a budget report that we'd like to see. I'm very concerned about explanations regarding this year's budget in getting a report that provides relevant information to us, and we're already in the month of December. We have concerns regarding the status of finding a finance manager. I know that the subcommittee, a search committee met in October. Fiscal responsibility is a big part of our role as a school committee member, so I would just like to move the question, Madam Chair.
So the motion on the floor is the establishment of a finance subcommittee for the 2014-2015 school year. Is that how we're going to leave the motion? Is there any other discussion?
Well, right now, it's a motion to move the question.
Well, the moving of the, yes, it's a request to move the question, which is non-debatable. So, Bruce is...
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to make an amendment to the motion, or make a motion to amend the motion to read establishment of a budget finance subcommittee for the 2014-2015 school year.
Second.
Thank you. Mrs. Donovan made an amendment, was requesting an amendment to the main motion, seconded by Mr. Abrahamson. So now we're going to vote on the amendment.
Point of order,
Is there any
Madam Chair.
discussion?
Point of order. I don't believe that we can make an amendment when we move the question. The question on the floor has to be voted on when it's moved.
The question on the
So
floor.
the question has been moved and we can't amend. I believe that's correct.
Okay.
I will rescind my motion to move the question.
Thank you. Thank you. So now, Mrs. Donovan.
I would like to make a motion to amend the motion to read establishment of a budget and finance subcommittee for the 2014-2015 school year.
And I second.
Thank you. Okay. Who knew? It will be so much fun. Okay. So now we have to vote on this amendment to the motion. Is there any other discussion on the amendment? No. Roll call, please.
Dr. Page?
Yes.
Mrs. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Quinney?
Yes.
Mr. Abrahamson?
Yes.
Mrs. Congdon?
Yes.
Mr. Olivo?
Yes.
Mrs. McLaughlin?
Yes.
All yes on the amendment?
Thank you. So now we're going to vote on the main motion, which is the establishment of a budget and finance subcommittee for the 2014-2015 school year. May I have a roll call, please?
Mrs. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Quinney?
Yes.
Mr. Abrahamson?
Yes.
Mrs. Congdon?
Yes.
Mr. Olivo?
Yes.
Dr. Page?
Yes.
Mrs. McLaughlin?
Yes.
All yes?
Thank you. We have a budget and finance subcommittee, and
Just a point to my colleague, Dr. Page. I hope you dig in the weeds, because I know that that's what you like to do. But I don't want to be in the weeds, too. So, filter these things before they come up here.
I will solicit members of that committee, and then, as is done in July when we structure committees, I'll let everybody know, and we can, at the next meeting, confirm those. Okay. Now we'll move on to Agenda Item 9, Unfinished Business. oh, this should be another fun one. The structure and content of the superintendent report to the school committee. This, again, is something that we are just trying to formalize a structure of the reports that we receive so that we kind of, in the school district, there are a lot of what are known as data dashboards with regard to student achievement. And the school committee, I think, would benefit from kind of an at-a-glance picture of what the district is doing and how it's doing. Some of this information is background information for the school committee. It's separate from the superintendent report that she provides publicly at the meetings. Just background information. Certain things have been suggested to be included in that report, like a general snapshot. So at the last school committee meeting, we discussed this, and since then, members have given feedback. That feedback's been kind of compiled here, and for everybody's consideration. So if we'd like to discuss this, I would actually entertain motion, or entertain, if we don't want to do a motion, if there's no motion on the floor, just begin a discussion. Just begin a discussion might be the best way to do it, since we don't have really anything to vote on. Yes, Mr. Abrahamson.
Much of this that's here, first of all, is something that belongs not in the superintendent's report, but in the finance report. So I think we can get rid of that right away. I mean, not get rid of it, but put it in its right place. The other, some things, for example, and I'll pick an example of, there was somewhere in here about grievances, okay? Well, grievances have a process, don't they? I mean, it's in the contract. There are levels, all right? So if that were to be reported, if we were to do that through the superintendent, then we would need a count of current grievances by school, for schools, okay? Then to the ones that have come beyond those walls to the superintendent, and ones beyond there to the school committee, and ones beyond there to arbitration. So if people are interested in knowing the number of grievances in the district, then we have to start with the number of grievances at each individual school.
Thank you. Is there any other discussion here on this report? I had included samples of various superintendent reports, and just samples. They were very different, and that's part of the reason I included the three of them there. And I thought there were interesting pieces kind of each, and you can just see how varied this is, but that also presents an opportunity for us to create our own and what works for us specifically. The concern I have on the grievance side is that that's kind of beyond the scope. The school committee doesn't get involved in that process until there's an arbitration, a pending arbitration. So, we have to be careful of our rules and not overstepping our bounds as far as that goes. But we certainly need to know, kind of be on the alert if there are, what I think would be helpful, if there are common grievances, if there are like the same issues coming up, because then that becomes maybe a contractual.
Madam Chair, if I may, going through the proper procedure, the procedure is there so that those on the higher levels don't mix in with that beginning process. We don't want someone coming from the school to a school committee member. That's why we have the procedure, and that's why we have the process, so it won't be abused. I think we need to make sure that the policy and the outline in the contract is followed. We won't run into as much difficulty if we follow things the way they're supposed to be done.
Dr.
May I
Page?
comment on that? So
Yeah.
I actually put that in the part of the recommendation, and maybe I was a little bit naive in including that. And really, the only thing that I was sort of, the reason I put it there, just having to think of is that maybe where it's appropriate for us to become aware of it, when it does rise to the superintendent's level, and maybe that's when it's restricted. I just think it should be something that's communicated to us in writing so that we are fully informed and aware of the fact that these things are happening, not with the intention of meddling, just so we know again, the point of this is to provide some kind of structure for us to have routine information about the operation of the district in such a way that we can plan, we can, monitor and kind of see how things are going and see what kind of things we might need to be anticipating. If this falls outside of the scope of something that's necessary, I'm happy to delete it if that's going to cause some kinds of problems. But really, it was just as an avenue for us to become aware of the fact that it's happening, not for any other purpose.
Madam Chair, the idea of the grievance procedure is that it's to be taken care of at the lowest possible level. If it's working well, we'll never know those that are happening, nor should we. So, I think, yes, we should probably take this out of here altogether.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think that there's a lot of information in here and good structures that are set up and different things that we're all looking for. But I think coming up with a document on the dais, this isn't a medium conducive to working through the different things that we have, things that we like, things that we don't like. Having only the way that these meetings are set up, I would recommend that we have a working meeting like we did for our operating protocols in order to all sit together, problem solve what's needed, what we like, what we don't like, and what works best for the district. But I think in a setting like this, we're not going to get very far or establish anything that we're going to be able to work with. So I would recommend that we have a working meeting to discuss this part.
Madam Chair, I believe my colleague suggested that we have a working meeting to discuss these, and I will move that in her behalf and second it on my behalf.
Okay. We have a motion and a second to schedule a working meeting for the purposes of discussing the superintendent report. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, can I have a roll call on that, please?
Mrs. Quinney?
Yes.
Mr. Abrahamson?
Yes.
Mrs. Congdon?
Yes.
Mr. Olivo?
Yes.
Dr. Page?
Yes.
Mrs. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. McLaughlin?
Yes.
All yes?
Thank you. So we'll work to schedule that meeting. So now we move on to the next unfinished business, which was removed from the consent agenda. So it's policy BG, proposed. Policy development, adoption, implementation, and review. I would just, I'm interested to hear what you have to say, Mrs. Quinney, but I just remind you there is a policy meeting tomorrow night, too, and we could certainly direct that concerns be remanded if necessary, but go ahead. Are you going to be able to?
My concern is under number 5.
Number 5. Actually, it looks like there's 2 5s. 5, 6.
It's the 5 after 6.
So it's 7.
The 5, so it's 7. Good catch.
It says that we'll review the policy manual not less than every 3 years. Do you really think that that is a feasible policy to set in place, given the size of the policy manual, and that we've been trying to do that for 2 years and haven't gotten very far?
Point well taken. Point well taken. So is it your recommendation that we just strike that out, and the school committee shall undertake a comprehensive review of this policy manual on a regular basis, period?
Or you could choose 5 years or a different number, but I don't think 3 is feasible. And maybe in this review cycle, we figure out what is, and then we can set a time. So if we strike that altogether, determine what a reasonable time frame is, and then implement that later.
So, Madam Chair, if we
That can go back to policy.
get rid of but not less than every 3 years, take that out, adopt it as it stands without that, and then after this year, we'll determine how long it takes, and then we can add the year in another adoption of a, policy.
Sure. Yeah, but nobody understood you.
And I will move that.
Okay.
Second.
So, we have a motion and a second, and the motion is on policy development, adoption, implementation, and review. On page 3 of 3, which was incorrectly listed as number 5, it's actually number 7, policy manual review, to strike the words, but not less than every 3 years. Is that, so we have the motion and the second on that. Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Mr. Abrahamson?
Yes.
Mrs. Congdon?
Yes.
Mr. Olivo?
Yes.
Dr. Page?
Yes.
Mrs. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Quinney? Mrs. McLaughlin?
Yes.
All yes?
Thank you, that carries. The next new business, the next regular school committee will be held on Tuesday, December 23rd at 7 o'clock in council chambers. Now is time for a member forum. Are there any members who would like to speak this evening? Aaron can't. Mr. Olivo?
I just want to say congratulations to the 2 students who were here tonight for the MCAS award. Congratulations to those 2 young men, and also to the high school seniors who received the John and Abigail Adams Scholarship. That's all I have.
Thank you. Anything else? Mr. Abrahamson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, back in June, when I ran for a spot in this school committee, I felt that the Southbridge school system was at a critical crossroads. Either it could be repaired, or it would stay broken and continue to deteriorate until it finally folded at the secondary level. I was and am aware of the severe problems in our district, particularly at the middle high school. I believed our district could be saved if there was a strict adherence to policy and protocol, if those systems already in place were followed with openness and integrity. Madam Chair, I still believe this to be true. But having observed the way the game of politics is played in this town, and indeed on this committee and by some of the town council, I am not optimistic. Madam Chair, I'm sorry to say that you have acted unilaterally on issues and made decisions that are not yours to make alone. Agenda items are included or excluded at your will, and too often are chosen to reflect the ideological positions of certain members while marginalizing those of others. I've had to learn some things that concern this committee by chance, and that's not acceptable. Some on this committee, Madam Chair, appear to see their role as a team sport with an us versus them scenario. They want to win at all costs and will go to great lengths to be on the popular side. And there isn't much sportsmanship in their type of play. They pile on and run up the score. Winning, to some, is not sweet until the opposing team is thoroughly beaten and humiliated. This groupthink is motivated by fear. Fear that one may not be included within a certain beer-drinking circle, or fear that someone may not be invited to certain social events. Any thinking apart from the group is to risk being ostracized, satirized, and shunned. Even among some adults, popularity is prized above all else. In no way are such attitudes confined to some on this committee or the town council, Madam Chair. The political game appears to extend to other adults in the school district. There's a culture of shifting ethics and bending the truth or outright deceit to achieve self-serving goals. There's been talk of returning the instruction in civics to our schools. The irony is not lost when students could see the contrast in the way civics is taught and how it is practiced by some of their role models. They are learning. But what are they learning, Madam Chair? Madam Chair, I'll close by saying the only hope I see it, as I see it for this school district, is for the adults to put away their toys and leave the schoolyard to actual kids. They are the ones who must come in first. Our job is to make them the winners. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who'd like to address the school? Just quickly, I wanted to acknowledge that Southbridge Middle High School students sent 3,482 greetings to servicemen and women who are stationed all over the world. This was done due to the hard work of many people at the school, I'm told, but the coordinators were Ms. Peoples and Mrs. Blake, so I'd like to acknowledge them. The Eastford Road School staff participated in the recent Festival of Giving Trees by creating a tree called 'Tis the Season to Be Reading, and there are pictures of that on the Eastford Road School website. Charlton Street School is currently running a canned food drive, so if you have any canned goods that you'd like to drop off to the office there, please do so and support those students there. And West Street School is working on Thanksgiving baskets. So I just wanted to make that known. Is there anything else? Oh, Christmas baskets? I'm sorry. Are they Christmas baskets? Oh, I'm sorry, Christmas baskets. I'm sorry about that. So if there are any donations you'd like to make to West Street School. And that's it. Unless there's anything else, no? Next is executive session. We will have executive session tonight. We need a vote to go into executive session pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A, subsection 3, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining. This is regarding the Service Employees International Union, Local 888, to the extent that an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigation position of the governmental body, and the chair so declares, I so declare. So I would need a motion.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Abrahamson.
Second.
Second by Mrs. Congdon. May I have a roll call, please?
Mrs. Congdon?
Yes.
Mr. Olivo?
Yes.
Dr. Page?
Yes.
Mrs. Donovan? Yes. Mrs. Quinney?
Yes.
That's a
Mr.
yes.
Abrahamson?
Yes.
Mrs. McLaughlin?
Yes.
All yes?
Thank you. The meeting will reconvene in open session after the conclusion of executive session to conclude the rest of the agenda. Thank you. Okay. Thank you. Good evening, welcome back. The time is 9:24. The school committee is reconvening its December 9th meeting after executive session. So the item in order on the agenda is discussion of positions contained in the CBA with SEIU Local 888. Mrs. Donovan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. As a result of our executive session, there is no action that needs to be required tonight relative to this issue. Coming out of executive session, we have determined that additional items will be researched and presented to us and put on a future agenda. So there is no action to be taken relative to this particular item. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So the next item on the agenda is adjournment.
Move to adjourn, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Abrahamson.
Second.
Seconded by Mrs. Congdon. A show of hands, please. All in favor? Unanimous. Thank you very much. Have a good evening. Thank you.